Hi kids! Welcome to our English session, Module 6, Day 2. We'll uncover adjective clause or relative clause. And for our lesson objectives, at the end of the lesson, we'll be able to familiarize oneself with the different conjunctions, provide correctly relative pronouns and other conjunctions that introduce a clause, and construct relative clauses as adjective clauses meaningfully in varied contexts. Now let's recall, identify independent clause and dependent clause. When my mother arrives, she will bring the food. Identify the independent clause. Correct. Next, I stayed at the seashore until the sun went down. Identify the dependent clause. Correct. I met children who asked for directions to the park. Identify the independent clause. Correct. Because I can't wait for the bus, I will walk to school. Identify the dependent clause. Correct. I like a house that is located on a hill. Identify the dependent clause. It is useful to familiarize the commonly used conjunctions and relative pronouns, as these are used to introduce clauses, most especially dependent clause. Knowledge of how they are used will help us become more effective in writing clauses. We have here relative pronouns take the place of nouns or pronouns. They are called relative pronouns because they always relate back to something or someone else. They are used to join two sentences about the same person or thing. Pronouns who, whose, whom, which, and that. Who replace the subject pronouns I, she, he, we, and they. Example, this is the man who broke the window. Whose show possession or relationship. She knew the family whose house we bought. Whom replace the object pronouns me, her, him, us, and them. Example, they have found the lady whom they want to interview. Which clauses that begin with which are almost always non-restrictive. Non-restrictive means not essential, and it often begins with a comma. Example, my precious blue lamp, which was in the room, was broken. And that clauses that begin with that are almost always restrictive clauses. Restrictive clauses, it means that it's very essential, very important, or very important part of the sentence. Example, the lamp that was in a room was broken. To introduce another dependent clause, it always starts also with a subordinating conjunctions. You have there in the table For comparison, we'll use than rather than, whether, as much as, whereas. For time, we'll use after, as soon as, until, whenever, now, that. For concession, we'll use though, although, even though. For relative pronouns, who, whoever, whom, whoever, whose. Reason, because, since, so that, in order to, and as. Condition, if, only if, unless, provided that, assuming that. Place, where, wherever. Relative adjectives, that, whatever, which, whichever. And for manner, how, as though, and as if. Let's take a look with these sentences. The man who arrived early today is a new boss. The woman whom you met is my mother. Residents who speaks roam around the neighborhood must see the village hint. This is the house that my parents built for us. The text message which I had not read came from my childhood friend. The highlighted clauses are called adjective clause because they modify a noun or a pronoun. In sentence 1, the noun is man modified by the clause who arrived early today. Woman is a noun modified by the clause whom we met. Residents is a noun modified by the clause who speaks room around the neighborhood. House is the noun modified by the clause that my parents built for us. And text message is a noun modified by the clause which I had not read. You will notice that each clause is introduced by words such as who, whom, whose, that, and which. They are called relative pronouns. Most of the time, the relative clauses functions as adjectives. For this reason, relative clauses are called adjective clause. We have to remember that they are introduced by the relative pronouns almost always come after the noun they modify. Now let's identify the adjective clause. Let's try. Is this the book that you bought online? Correct. Next, Bon Bon is a little baby whom you helped a year ago. Correct. The author whose work sold a lot of copies is my favorite. Correct. The painting which is displayed in this hall belongs to my cousin. Correct. Okay, so combine the two sentences by changing the second sentence into a relative clause. Let's try. The man called his wife was at the backyard. So with the given two sentences, we'll make it one, and then we'll combine it with the use of relative pronoun. We'll drop the words his wife, and then we'll change it into who, and then we'll continue to the rest of the sentence. The man called his wife who was at the backyard. The doctor gave the medicine to the children. The children were sick. So let's change this first. Okay, the doctor gave the medicine to the children who were sick. Okay, correct. We'll use. This is my friend Salome. Her house is a reminiscent of Spanish colonization. Okay, my friend Salome, whose house is a reminiscent of Spanish colonization. Whose, whose house is a reminiscent of Spanish colonization. Okay, correct. And then supply a relative clause to the following sentences. Happy is the man. So we have there the clue, man. So we'll think for a relative pronoun, and with the relative pronoun we'll produce an adjective clause. Happy is a man who walks in the ways of God. I've always dreamed of a house that is located on a hill. Be in the company of friends who can make things right. Okay, to sum it up, a clause is a group of words with at least a subject and a verb. It is a sentence in its simplest form. The subject of a clause can be mentioned or hidden, but the verb must be apparent or distinguishable. Clauses can be independent or dependent. Different conjunctions are used to introduce a dependent clause. That would be all. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you on our next virtual class. Bye.